Right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So last class we already start with chapter number 2, and we finish at how to construct a frequency table for quantitative data. Right. So for today we're going to start with histogram. Right. So histogram is a graphical presentation of a frequency table or relative frequency table, right? It's a presentation of frequency table, relative frequency table of quantitative data. So this is the most important key that you need to understand. So histogram is meant for quantitative data. So it consists of a series of bar joining each other or by class boundary. So if you still remember on bar graph, right, we have bar represent each class, and each bar is not connected with another bar, right? It has a space between bar, right? For histogram, it has a same presentation layout, right? So it has bar. For first bar and the second bar, there are no gap between first bar and second bar and the following bar, right? So each bar represent class boundary. So this is a lower class boundary and this is upper class boundary for the first class. Right, this is upper class boundary for the second class and followed by third or fourth and so on. So x-axis represent class boundary, right? And y-axis represent frequency, right? So this is a layout for histogram, right? The purpose of histogram is we want to see the shape of the distribution of the data, right? Whether the data is normally distributed, skewed to the right or skewed to the left, right? So the height of each bar represent frequency of each class, while the width of each bar represent the class size of each class. So lebar histogram bar ni represent class size. So the height represent frequency of each class, right? So one important characteristic of histogram is the area of each bar proportional to the frequency of each class. Therefore, it is important to see class size of each class of the frequency table, whether they are equal width or not before drawing histogram. But we don't worry, in our subject, it should be all equal width. Means all dalam frequency table we have a same class size, right? So this is a example of histogram, right? This is histogram. Right, let's look at example 11, right? We try to draw histogram based on example 11, right? So first we have a frequency table, a daily sales of 35 hawkers they taken randomly in town are shown in table below. We have daily sales and number of hawker, right? So 121 to 136. So the requirement for histogram is we need to have a class boundary, right? If you want to create a class boundary, means that you need to convert this class to class boundary, right? So this one is 120.5 to 136.5. 136.5 to 152.5, 53.5 to 168.5. This is 168.5 to 184.5, 184.5 to 200.5. And this is the frequency value. So we want frequency value and class boundary. So let's begin to create a histogram. First, you need to create a y axis, followed by x axis, right? And just need to remember, y axis represent frequency. So in this case is number of occur, right? And x axis represent class boundary. Class boundary in this case is the daily sales, right? We start to draw histogram from the zero origin. Kita akan letak satu gap, let's say two box empty, and start with the first bar. The first bar should be 120.5. Let's say we take 4 bar, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 136.5. And this is, sorry, I ambil 3 pula. So this is 136.5. This is 152.5, and so on lah. So can you try to draw the histogram by your own? 168.5, 184.5, and the last one is 200.5. Right. So this is going to be our class boundary. Right. So now we try to figure out the frequency value. Let's say this is 2, this is 1, 2. So let's say I draw the first class. First class is 7. So let's say from here to here. So this is our first bar for histogram. And then for the second class is 6. The third class is 11. From here. Oops. The fourth class is 6. And the last class is 5. So this is a histogram. So make sure in your histogram you should have axis title for x axis and y axis, right? And then you should have the title for the whole graph, the histogram showing distribution of daily sales of 35. Okay. Nampak tak? So this is how we draw histogram, right? Make sure title ada dekat atas lah. I punya kenapa I tak nak? Yeah. Are you okay? If you're okay, then please say something on chat room, right? So this is how we draw histogram, right? So now we move to the next plot that we're going to draw, which is a frequency polygon. Frequency polygon is a graph that formed by joining the midpoint of each class. It also can be drawn from histogram by joining the midpoint of each bar. Right. From the previous lecture, we already know what is the midpoint. Midpoint is the middle value of class boundary, class size, right? So 120.5 plus 136.5, 120.5 plus 136.5 divided by 2, it should be equal to 128.5. So this is going to be your midpoint for the first class, right? So we will point a midpoint for each height of the bar. So this is going to be your midpoint, right? And this is going to be our midpoint as well, right? This is our midpoint. So then the next step is we're going to connect this midpoint. We're going to join the midpoint together, right? Let me use another color. So by joining the midpoint for each class, this is what we call as a frequency polygon, right? So frequency polygon again is a graph that formed by joining the midpoint of each class, right? It can be drawn from a histogram by joining the midpoint of each bar. So the red color line ini adalah frequency polygon, right? Okay. For frequency curve, right? For the next graph is a frequency curve. Frequency curve is a graph that join the midpoint of each class. Sama juga dengan frequency polygon, right? It can be also drawn by using original drawn polygon by smoothing the sharp point of the polygon. So means that for frequency polygon, we draw a line, right? With a sharp line, right? But for frequency curve, we just need to smooth the line. Means this is going to be macam ni. We just draw using our freehand. So dia akan jadi smooth lah, right? So that is a frequency curve, right? So far, do you understand how to draw histogram? This is going to be very easy if you understand the key element that required in histogram. So first key element is we need to have a class boundary for each for x-axis and frequency on y-axis, right? Each bar represent lower class boundary and high upper class boundary, right? So upper class boundary and lower class boundary is taken from a frequency table, right? This frequency table. Okay. So let's move to another graph, which is time and live display.